Okay, so let's do some hands. I'm currently in 203 at the minute, so that's why it's a little bit echoey. Hopefully the sound's good enough, but let's do some hands. Yeah, hands, fairly simple as a basic shape. There's not a whole lot of information, like compared to the head. There's a whole lot of information coming through, and I'm only going to show the one way of doing the hand, the easy way of doing the hand in here. Obviously, you've got the Z-spheres, and you've got all different ways of doing them. You've got making them out the entire one piece of geometry, which can be a bit tricky, but it's just a way. I'm going to show you doing the palm as one geometry, and then the thumb and fingers as another geometry. Okay, so let's get into it. So I've got my sphere here, and obviously it's nice and low res. That's what we want. If you are obviously in your scene and you want to bring in something to start a hand with, you just append a 3D sphere, which will look like this, and then Dynamesh it right away. Dynamesh it right away so that you're not dealing with these poles. These poles will just make it a bit hard to kind of, affect and move around and stuff. So just make sure you Dynamesh it to something like this. Okay, so straight away I'm going to start off with my move brush. And in fact, I'm not. I'm just going to get my gizmo. I'm just going to scale it down like that. Boom. I'm going to squash it down to get the kind of shape of a hand, the depth. One thing I don't want to do is have the hand be too fat or too thin. Remember, there is bones inside there, but there's also muscles and fat deposits. Have a look at your own hand. And if we think of this back bit here as the thumb, and this front bit here as the fingers, if you look at your own hand, you do see that you do go fatter at the back, where the part where the pads of the hand are to the fingers or knuckles here gets a bit thinner. So I'm just going to start to, I'm quite happy with that shape there. From the top here, I'm just going to start to get the shape in there. So I'm thinking the thumb's going to be over here. So let me just start, turn off symmetry. Let me just start to get it into shape. So flatten off the sides a little bit for obviously the palm of the hand. I'm dragging out this kind of like thumb cap, thumb sock kind of thing to use later on. And get the little Nike swoop in the fingers. So obviously my middle finger is going to be here. Pointer finger, ring finger, little finger. And then from the front, I'm just going to get that swoop in there as well. So where my thumb's there. And let's bring down my thumb, because thumb's in the wrong position. Remember, the thumb needs to be coming out at a kind of a 45-degree angle. So I'm just going to pull that down a little bit. Now already, it's kind of looking like a hand already. Already it's kind of looking like a hand already. What? It's looking like a hand already. We've got some shape in there. We've got landmarks for the thumb for now. And if we remember looking at our fingers and our knuckles, if you look at the back of your palm where you've got your knuckles, your fingers look a little bit longer than if you look at your palm of your hand where all the pads are, the fingers look shorter. That's because the webbing on the inside of the fingers is on the underside of the palm. So, you'll be able to see, if you look at your own fingers, look at your own kind of fingers, you'll be able to see that. So I'm making sure that I've got this kind of swoop, this angle, wrong tool, this kind of angle in my fingers like that. Cool. And I guess what I'll do is I'm just going to drag out something that starts the wrist a little bit. Obviously this is, you might already have a wrist coming in from a body. So you might not need to do this, but if you're just making a hand on its own, make a wrist just so you know where stuff is coming from. Now your hand is very flat, but your wrist is very round. This part of the wrist is more like a squashed, kind of a squash shape like this. A little bit. I'm just going to trim off this back like that. There we go. So faff, just getting stuff in. Boop, boop. Okay. Right. Okay, so we've got the beginning of a hand there. It's kind of choppy and stuff at the minute, but it's all good. You see I've Dynameshed that, and I've also chopped off the back using the Control and Shift, changing the selected knife tool, turned off perspective so we got a nice straight cut, and then boom, there we go. Okay, now it's time for my fingers. So my fingers, I'm just going to use, you can either use a cylinder or a cube for this. I'm going to use a cube just because I think I feel like I can get to a better finger shape from a cube. And with this as well, you've got poles at the top and the bottom. But you know, when they've created these cubes, they just created them using this kind of shape. We want to change that again, but just for now, I'm just gonna put it into position. I'm gonna start off with my middle finger as well. So let's put this at the back and start to scale down. The length. And let's get the measure of this as well. So remember, your middle finger, the one that we measure off, is roughly the length of the palm of the hand. We might have to make a few adjustments, but it's roughly the length of the palm of the hand. So let's put that in place. Okay, it's looking okay, and then I can do the Dynamesh. That's too dense. There we go. I guess 32. Boom. There we go. Nice. What I'm going to do is, before I start to bend this into a finger shape, I'm just going to start to grab a tablet, grab a pen. I'm just going to start to soften this out. Maybe, you know, not try and get the final finger shape there at first, but I'm just going to try and get a finger shape in there. So I'm smoothing down the edges a little bit. Let's check from the front again. That's looking better. Smooth it again. So I'm just using the smooth tool just to smooth out that. That's looking nice. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. Smooth that and smooth that. Remember that the top of the finger is a little bit flatter than the bottom of the finger. You know, but the bottom of the finger is a lot rounder than the top of the finger. That's because, you know, you've got bones and stuff at the top. And then I'll just maybe raise up this bit. There we go. And then from the side, I'm just gonna make a bit of a fingery kind of shape. Like that. Cool. Okay, finger. And then remember to shake out your hand and look at it, because we want to make sure that this is nice and relaxed. So we don't want really, really stiff fingers. And that's one thing I'm seeing in a lot of people's stuff. Very, very stiff fingers. And even if you put them in a kind of relaxed claw, they all look kind of tense. I think it's because you're spreading the fingers out a bit too much, or you're kind of putting too much of an arc in it. It looks like everything's very tensed. So we're going to try and get that relaxed feel. So all I'm going to do is mask off the halfway point there. Move this to, I'm going to move my pivot point to where the knuckle would be, not necessarily in the middle of the thumb of the finger, but when the knuckle would be. Like that. And then, in fact, I'm just going to change this to lasso. Then I go for the third knuckle, same jazz. And I'm going to put this back to where the thumb is, where the knuckle is, and I'm going to do that really nice, quick duplication trick. So I'm going to make a bit thinner. I'm going to make my pointer finger first. So I'm just going to hold Control and then drag. That makes a new finger. So I'm going to make it a tiny bit smaller, and then I'm going to slightly rotate it out. There we go. And then I'm going to slightly rotate it down. And I'm just going to flip my mask, so holding Control, clicking in grey space to bring that back, and I'm going to move my pivot point back to my knuckle, hold Control, drag off my ring finger, move it a bit down, because remember we've got that Nike swoop. So I'm going to scale that down a little bit, move it down a little bit. Rotate down a little bit. It's ever so slightly rotated in as well. Ever so slightly rotated in, because your fingers do technically rotate in. If you look at your hand, nice and relaxed from the front, if you're able to. There is a bit of a tilt inwards. And then hold control again, drag out my little finger. Now this one does get quite small, so let's just bring it down. There we go. So we'll look at that, make some judgment calls. And I'm also going to make sure each one of these has its own poly group, because then it makes it really easy to adjust later on. So I'm going to, because currently they're all the same color, which means they're all the same poly group. So I'm going to come in my menus, come down to poly group, and I'm just going to click auto group, and that will assign a new group per finger. And then I can come in here and I can hold control and manually select those groups, which is nice. And I can make adjustments. So in fact, I'm going to change the way that the fingers kind of sit. Thin them out a little bit. That looks better. I'm going to grab my middle finger and I'm going to do the exact same thing, but I'm going to make my thumb out of this. So I'm going to, again, hold control, drag it off. I'm just going to start to move this into place. So again, really look at your own hand with this. Really, you are your best reference for this. So there's no reason why we should get this wrong. So that looks too far away. I'm just going to bring it in, inflate it a little bit. So that quick inflate that I'm doing there, if I just hold control and then drag from the middle there, you can see underneath it says scale XYZ, control to inflate. And I'm just going to inflate it a little bit. Because your thumb is, you know, I'd say your thumb is slightly bigger, slightly chunkier than your pointer finger, your middle finger. There we go, that feels nice. So you can see there that my original it's kind of sketch, actually, no, it's not. Something like that. Okay, I'm going to do that. My original sketch of the actual palm of the hand was just a little bit off, as most things are when we're doing this kind of stuff. And then I'm just going to move stuff around. I'm just going to start to, you know, move the mesh around. Trying to get as much of it to blend in as seamlessly as I can at this stage. So if I just get the trim dynamic, I can start to just push some of that back. Push that back a little bit. Push this back a little bit. And get some perspective. There we go. So I want to cover any kind of gaps. So I can see here that I've got a few things I need to kind of cover up. So this gap here, fill up this one with the little finger. Dynamesh. I'm going to change the material because I'm struggling to see stuff. So I'm going to change it to something a bit more like that. There we go. I can see things. Maybe highlight. Yeah, there we go. Always change the material to help you, don't fight the material. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Basic information. I'm just going to up-res my Dynamesh on my palm of the hand now to something like 128. Yeah, because now I can start to just get some important information, such as slightly overemphasizing it first, but the knuckle, or like this. I haven't really got them in my hand because I'm a bit chunky, but you might have little indentations coming in from the webbing. So I'm just gonna push those in a little bit. And when I'm doing this as well, I'm not going in a straight line, I'm kind of aiming back here, because there's a band which goes across the palm, across here, all the tendons kind of go into. Kind of held down by it. So I'm having these kind of, not come to a point, but start to aim to that area. And then I can just pad up a little bit of that, pad up a little bit of that, pad up a little bit of that. Maybe add, I'm going to take my focus shift down some less that chunky information. Add a little bit of the pad, the palm, not too much though, I don't want to make it really, really chunky. Part of the palm there, part of the palm there. Okay. And just jumping in between tools and just, you know, getting some information in there. So bop, 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 something like that. And I'm just going to Dynamesh these together. But when I Dynamesh these, I'm going to Dynamesh them at 32 first of all. Or maybe 64. And then I'm also going to turn groups on. So what groups will do is, if anything's too close to each other, you know, I might see if it does it with that. There you go. So you can see here that without groups turned on, these start to merge together. Now, if they're all hidden and they'll eventually get Dynameshed out anyway, that's fine. But if you don't, if you want to keep these things separate for a while, just turn on groups, and then they'll Dynamesh there, but they won't actually merge groups like that, which is useful for us. So yeah, I'm just going to put that up to 128, same as my actual palm. Nudge the mesh slightly, Dynamesh. Whoa. There we go. It's looking good. So now I can go in here and start to make my fingers look a little bit better. And there's not a whole lot of stuff that goes on in the fingers, but it's just all about trying to get the chunkiness out of the way, trying to get because these are pretty fatty fingers, so I'm going to be taking a bit away. And one trick that I like doing is just with the smooth tool. I'm just going to smooth the edges of these down. So I'm using the smooth tool less as an actual way to get rid of noise or anything like that, but I'm using it to smooth back, almost like an anti-inflate. I could also use inflate, but I'm using kind of like an anti-inflate brush. Let me just push the thumb in a little bit. Now I've got to remember which direction my thumb's facing, so this is where the nail's going to be. So I could, nail. So I've got to remember that. So I've got to think about the shape of the thumb. And again, use your own thumb. So bring a bit more point to it, maybe make it a bit wider. Oh, pardon me, oh, with the burps. Something like that. Bit raggedy at the minute, but it's fine. And eventually go through each one of the fingers and do that. One thing that I'd want to always be aware of as well is to make sure that we don't, it's because of the Dynamesh, it's doing it a little bit now, but I don't want to get noodle fingers where there's no clear break where the knuckles are. It just seems to kind of like curve. Fingers don't curve, you know. You've got bones in there which cause these breaks. So I'm just going to force in some of those breaks. And again, however you want to do this, you can, you know, go about it yourself. It's all about just experimenting. You know, what tool do you feel comfortable with to create that kind of information? And I think this will take a little bit of time to do, just because it's all about control, and it is one of them things that I'm not particularly. I can make some really nice hands. They just take me a while. Whereas like making heads and bodies and stuff, I can smash it out really, really quick. Hands take me a bit of time. But I think hands are obviously a really nice, important part of a character. Unless you go out your way to design a character with no hands. So one thing I might do at the beginning as well is outline muscle bone landmarks, a bit OTT. Especially if I'm struggling to get the form of the hand, I'll be like, right, where are the bones? I'll bring the bones back in. Another thing I can show you as well, and it just kind of happened a bit there, is because we're working with stuff which is very close together, like that, the move brush is going to start affecting both sides of that. It's also why it's also good to put polygroups and stuff. So there is a brush that's already set up to do this, and it's called the Move Topological. So it's B for brushes, Move, so M, and then T for topological, Move Topological. And what this brush does is whatever polygroup you've clicked on, it will only move that one polygroup. Now we can actually change our normal brush menu, our brush to do this. If we go to the brush menu, go to auto masking, where our backface masking's contained. At the very top, you've got this mask by polygroups, and if we just turn that up to max, it does the same thing. There we go. So now it's not grabbing from the other side. So just making the fingers a bit pointy. You can see still are a little bit fatty, but it's all good. It's just using the move tool just to define those knuckle bones, and then thin out the tip of the finger. I do think that's one thing that makes some fingers look a bit too fatty, is the tip of the finger's really big and not pointy enough. And then flip side of that, that's also where some fingers can look very bony, is this if you've made them really, really bony, really, really thin. So, a bit of touching up. So like I said, I'm not going to go through the whole finger process in this video, because it'll take me ages. Like I said, it takes me a while to do fingers. But one of the first things I'll be doing is just making sure the fingers look correct. You know, make sure they're not too fatty or too thinny. Make sure that you've got nice clear shapes so they're not noodly. Checking from the front and back, all that kind of stuff. Takes a bit of a while, you know, it's fingers and thumbs are a bit weird. And after that, and I could spend a long time worrying over how the fingers are joining to the hand. But at this stage, all I'm going to do is just blend them together. So I'm going to geometry, subtool, merge down, and then just see what a 128 Dynamesh should do. See if anything blends, which I don't want it to, which it doesn't. Cool, awesome. Pretty good. And then I just have to, you could also do that at a high resolution, slightly high, not massively higher. And then at that stage, I'm just about blending out the bad joins. Some of them you actually work for us. But I want to take out all these like joining information that it gives us. Just, you know, some of these are all right. That one isn't right because these ones are right because they're straight lines, straight lines. This one isn't right because it's a curve like this. So I really want this to be straight. So I'm just gonna do that. Pad out a little bit. Pad out a little bit. Thumb definitely. So you can see there's a really awkward joining lines on the thumb. Oh, so I need to turn off. That's one of the dangers of using the brush auto mask feature is that unlike the backface mask where that is on, you know, if you turn it on one brush, it doesn't apply backface masking to everything. The auto masking by polygroups does apply to everything, so I'm just going to turn that off. There we go. Just blend it into the thumb, have a look. There you go. And there's also things that we can look at on the hand. So I like this webbing on the sides of the hand here. I quite like bringing that out if my character or my subject needs it. I'm going to pull them right back because these tendons I've sketched in seem a little bit OTT, so I'm just going to pull them right back, smooth and back. And right now you just work more into the hand. This is a really, really rough hand, but this is the beginning of a hand, especially the kind of hand that I do, because again, hands aren't my strongest thing. They should be. I should be great at hands, but I'm not. Okay. I can fix up some stuff. So the palm of the hand there was too round. So yeah, we do on that curve, but that was a little bit too intense. Back of the hand looks good. Thumb looks good. It looks fairly relaxed, which is good. My knuckles aren't good because I've got these kind of, almost like my knuckles are bumps, which I don't want that. So what I'm going to do is change my material because it's getting a bit bright. So let's go for this. That's good. And then I'm just going to blend these in a little bit. That's better. And again, I'm just going to kind of emphasize some of this information. So the information being the knuckles. There you go. So I'm going to hold the video there. I said I'm going to do that and then I keep going and do stuff. So yeah, that's a really, really quick way of doing hands. Obviously, you can get this. You can get to this exact position by using Z-spheres, by doing the whole thing out of one piece of geometry. Each one has difficulties. Each one's have like pros and cons. Just take your time with them. Hands, you know, all you've got is palms and fingers, but it's the shapes that are within those parts. You know, the shape of the palm, and then also things like the webbing. You've got tendons which run. You've got your ulna and your wrist bone there. You've got the little pads of fat here. So all these things that make up a hand, and make it look realistic. Oh, my thumb is proper broke. That's a broken thumb right there. Right, there we go. Yeah, it just takes a while, but I really, really kind of implore people to just look at hands and really look at the thickness of stuff. You know, fingers, even though they are chunky, fingers might not necessarily be chunky compared to everything else. Or on the flip side, you know, maybe your fingers are a bit too wiry on yours. There you go. So a hand, perfectly good to either, you know, work on even more, or to put on a character to then blend it into, then work on it even more. You know, Very good. There you go. See you in the next one.